event objectives are to identify opportunities on how to integrate financial inclusion into the research portfolios of students and faculty, explore and discuss arrangements regarding the implementation of the Financial Inclusion Lab projects with different colleges and disciplines, and identify the critical activities for the implementation of the Financial Inclusion Lab. So we'll have speakers for today, and I'd like to welcome them, Ms. Pia Tayag. She is, okay, just to do some initial introductions, the Managing Director of the Center for Learning and Inclusion Advocacy of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. I'd also like to acknowledge Professor Peter C., Professor of UP Diliman, I believe, and Professor Toby Monsod as well is here. Mr. Maynard Mojica will also be speaking later. He is the Acting Deputy Director for the Center for Learning and Inclusion Advocacy of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. And of course, Dr. Elmer Soriano will also be talking to us about the Financial Inclusion Lab later. So maybe we can do a round of introductions among ourselves. Would you like to start, Elmer?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Elmer Soriano. I'm with the Financial Inclusion Lab. Welcome, everyone. We had planned this before the pandemic, and we realized finally that this wasn't. We were thinking of waiting until the pandemic blows over, but we realized teka muna, matagal pa yata yun, no? So we decided to pursue this online. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon.
Okay, so Prof. Rob.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Nazal. I'm also with UP, lecturing for the Department of Social Work. I'm also connected with Business Fair Trade Consulting as one of the consultants.
Okay, thank you very much. I just go down the thread. So Mr. John Fernandez from...
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Fernandez. I'm the director of the Ateneo Intellectual Property Office. I'm also a researcher with a background in computer science. I was invited by Benji, and I've met with Elmer, I think a couple of weeks ago. Hi, Elmer. Hi, Benj. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, glad you could join us.
Okay, Professor Peter C.
Hello, my name is Peter C. I'm with the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy. I co-founded the UP Social Innovations Lab, upclab.org.
Nice. Thank you very much for being here, Professor C. Benji Mirasol.
Good afternoon. I'm Benji Mirasol. I'm also with John Fernandez of the Ateneo Intellectual Property Office.
Okay, welcome. Miss Joyce Sufficiencia. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Miss Joyce. Oh, I think I skipped Erickson, Mr. Erickson Liaguno.
Hello, magandang hapon. I'm Eric Liaguno from the College of Engineering of UP. I'm actually attending for our Dean, Dean Ferdinand Manegdec.
Oh, good. Welcome. Miss Joyce, are you ready with your audio? Or maybe we can go to Miss Katrina Catral. Maybe they stepped out. Maynard, would you care to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Maynard Mojica from the Financial Inclusion Group, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Hi.
Hello, sorry, I didn't read this. I'm Joy Sufficiencia under Ms. Pia's team also.
Welcome. And I've called on Professor C earlier, and Ms. Pia Tayag.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Pia Taig from the Bangko Central. You'll hear more from me later.
Yes. Welcome and good afternoon. Randy,
Hi po, magandang.
surname.
Yes, sorry. My name is Show, and Doc Elmer invited me to join forum working for Data for Impact with the Civica.
Okay. Okay. Welcome. Miss Ronalie Asuncion.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ronalie Asuncion, but please call me George. I am from the School of Labor and Industrial Relations, UP Diliman.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome. Professor Toby Mansot.
Hi, I'm from the, am I, yeah, I'm from the School of, can you hear me? You know, I wasn't expecting, I was planning to listen, but I'm happy to be here. I'm Toby Monsot from the UP School of Economics, and I did some work with the group of PIA, and I really enjoyed it with Banco Central on financial inclusion.
Okay, honored to have you here, Professor Mansot. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Justin Nicolas.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Justin Nicolas from the College of Social Work and Community Development.
Yes.
Currently the chairperson of the Department of Social Work.
Good afternoon and welcome. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
I think that, did we hear from Katrina already? Katrina Catral?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Katrina Catral po from the BSP then under Miss Pia Tayag.
All right. Good afternoon. I hope I did not miss anyone. Okay.
Yeah, that looks about it.
We covered everyone. Okay, good. Okay, so I think we would like to hear some opening remarks first from Ms. Pia Tayag.
Yes, thank you again, Leia. So first of all, good afternoon and thank you for everyone for attending. As I understand, we have this small group where we can have discussions, but I understand we're also live on Facebook. So happy to also interact with a broader audience. We thank everyone for attending. This is the first Financial Inclusion Lab Research Forum jointly organized by the BSP and Civica. As was mentioned earlier, we had a talk early this year about partnership like this. The idea is to create a platform for collaboration with the academe that will incubate and scale up development solutions to address real problems on the ground insofar as financial inclusion is concerned. So we all have to adjust. This was supposed to be in UP Diliman in March, but I'm glad to see a lot of the UP professors in this call. Indeed, I think this will have to be the new normal for meetings and fora. So we're happy to have this with you. Well, in the interim, since that time we talked, we already published our financial inclusion survey results, and the Deputy Director Maynard will present the findings there. And I think that will be fertile ground for discussion and for identification of challenges. If I may segue, Professor Toby worked with us on our second run. No, sorry. Was it the second run, Toby? after the first one in preparation for the second. Yeah, so hopefully this one is a further that really helped us improve our focus, and hopefully this one will also similarly give us deep insights that we need to understand the market, the challenges, and the current situation. So the reason why even at the initial discussion we really welcome this partnership is that our belief has always been the strength of evidence-based policy making. In fact, when the Financial Inclusion Office was created in the BSP, we were the first in the world actually. And then second was Mexico to have an office dedicated for financial inclusion, and the first staff personnel in that office were one of them is Maynard, was really designed to be a team to increase our capacity for data collection and analysis to help us inform our initiatives and programs. And so this proposed FI Lab, well, this FI Lab, which will bring real-world financial inclusion problems into research by aligning student academic projects with problem sets, if you will, of policymakers and financial service providers is indeed very aligned to our belief. We support an academe, industry, and government collaboration. This type of collaboration is espoused even in our own national strategy for financial inclusion. So that strategy has been a platform of many such partnerships, and this is something aligned with that. So this collaboration, ideal and meaningful then, but it comes now at even a more opportune time. In light of this pandemic, we really saw the vulnerabilities of those who are unserved and unbanked, or those who are underserved or underbanked, particularly our micro, small, and medium enterprises. We know that they were severely affected, and even the institutions that are supporting them, the microfinance institutions, have also become very affected by the pandemic. So they themselves will also need some support to continue their work in serving the last mile, if you will. So we also saw the vulnerabilities of being excluded. As we all know, the pandemic necessitated a massive social transfer program, and 18 million individuals had to be paid in a very speedy manner because of the urgent need for cash transfers. And that really highlighted the fact that without an account, these cash outs done purely physical will really put a strain on personnel and resources, especially in light of the nature of our crisis now, which is a health pandemic, a health crisis that does not support these types of mass payouts that need to be done. So definitely the inclusion front, and we've been working with DSWD on this, and to give you just some good news, at least in this collaboration with DSWD, they're working with 6 financial service providers. One of them is the former work of Rob. So I know Rob from his past life. And they've already created 7.3 million new accounts to disburse digitally, at least the second tranche of the SAP. So if you look at that, that's 7 million of the country's most vulnerable now financially included. And, this is really something that really excites me, but then also challenges us, our team, to think of what will be the second order issues now that we have brought 7.3 million of the most vulnerable, possibly of the poorest, into the financial system to ensure that they will now benefit from these accounts. They will know how to use it, and that they will really be able to enjoy the value of being formally included. So that would really be something that is a next order agenda for us to look at collectively, no, but also the BSP in partnership with the DSWD. So those are some of the things that the pandemic sort of accelerated. In fact, in 1.5 months during the ECQ, the first declaration of ECQ, we also noted 4 million new digital accounts opened. Okay, so those I mentioned the 7.3 million. Those are really new accounts and very unique accounts. Now, the 4 million, it may be duplicate accounts. Those who were a bit hesitant to go digital were forced to open e-money accounts to make payments from home for all the deliveries and online shopping, maybe. But still, that's a good indication of a willingness to adapt and to use digital means. So that was in a span of a month and a half. So all the efforts we've been doing, I think the pandemic has also accelerated a lot of the urgency, at least has pointed to the urgency of being financially included. So we hope that the FI Lab, this collaboration, will be able to address the challenges and build on the opportunities that I mentioned, as well as what I was saying as probably next order issues that could be further explored through research collaborations between stakeholders and the academe. So on our part, of course, we will continue to intensify our efforts. You will see that we have made progress. The Philippines has made progress in financial inclusion. Maynard will walk us through some of the findings of the financial inclusion survey. But so I won't talk about that, but maybe I'll just end with sharing with you that the governor has also approved our digital payments transformation roadmap 2023. So the end goal or the destination statement or desired outcome of this roadmap is that the digital first option will be more common among consumers, and that there will be an environment where there is a lot of responsive and inclusive products that are available for all. So that's what it wants to achieve. And this could be evidenced by the high-level targets that the roadmap has put in place, which is inclusion of 70% by 2023. So that's it seemed like a very ambitious goal when the roadmap was crafted, but by the gains in the SAP, we also worked with Dole, and Dole recently issued an advisory to encourage employers to pay wages and salaries into accounts. So we see these catalysts as a means to achieve this. So it seems achievable, 70% by 2023, and electronic retail transactions 50% of total. So currently it would probably be roughly around 20%. So again, doubling that by 2023. We are quite confident that we will reach this, but there will be a lot of things that need to be in place. So this roadmap has 3 main pillars. It talks about digital finance infrastructure. It talks about digital finance data and governance or standards. So issues like open banking, data sharing frameworks, consent frameworks, building on the upcoming the PhilSys, the national ID, which is a digital ID. So these are all very important and exciting areas that we also want to flag or highlight for possible research or further investigation. So as I said, we will continue to be committed to this. Our governor has stated that he wants to bring BSP closer to the Filipino as his target for his governorship, and we think the financial inclusion agenda, which has been there for a while, the BSP has been pushing this for many years under previous governors, Governor Espinilla, Governor Tetanco, will continue to help in achieving that objective of making the financial system more relevant and inclusive, not as the end in itself, but as a means for broad-based and inclusive growth. So I will end there, and I hope that gives you a good sense of our where our interest in this partnership, our our current initiatives, and our continued commitment to do this moving forward. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pia Tayad. Looking forward to what Maynard would be discussing with us, which is the latest National Financial Inclusion Survey. So now we would like to hear from Professor Peter See to give his perspectives on social innovation in national development.
Hearing Pia did the introductions, I'm afraid I'm going to pose more questions than answers. I was delighted to hear the news about the new digital accounts, 7.2 million, the 4 million for 4Ps. Looking at these developments and what other labs in the other parts of the world have been doing, I will just do some highlighting of some issues that I thought are important in this discussion. So first, what do we mean by social innovations? By social innovation, so we refer to new social practices, models, designs, products to address social needs. And what you guys are talking about could well be something that would fall under the theme of social innovation. But the idea really is to look at micro areas in, for instance, working conditions, and also general practices, education, health, community development, environment as being driven by social issues. So we have pressure points, for instance, in participation of civil society. We look at activism, policy influence, intervention via microfinancing, what you guys are doing, incentives, you look at social rules and the like. So if you look at, initially Elmer was saying we should be talking about university response. And so I looked at UP and compared with Ateneo, LaSalle, at least the big ones, at least what we can gather from, and this method is very arbitrary. I have no time to interview people. So UP has a unified response to COVID. And you see there an approach that's very much clinical and epidemiological, of course. And there's this discussion about development of toolkits, diagnostics. Our engineering college has some colleagues developing sanitation contraptions and the like. But I guess there are far more complex issues out there that need to be addressed. So if you look at the pains, when we talk about the COVID crisis, we probably would be asking the question, what is uniquely COVID? What's unique about this crisis? Probably has to do with the scale and the rate of infection. This has been a tenacious virus. There is social isolation, which is not really unique, but maybe the scale also. The complexity and unpredictability of the disease. There are hopes of a vaccine or vaccines. Russia is coming in, China, US, but then there's also the reality check that it may not last, and you will not be solely depending on vaccines as the sole solution. But more importantly, in the ground, the COVID crisis has amplified the existing prevailing socioeconomic inequalities. And these are pains that inform our actions when we do, our work. So looking at the macro picture, there are all sorts of factors that we need to consider: demographic, of course, geographic, and increasingly governance. Why is Pasig doing better than Quezon City, for instance, at least in the perception of the public? If you look at demographics in terms of ages, for instance, this is very much a worldwide phenomenon. These are confirmed cases by age group. But then those who get infected do not necessarily die. It's your nanas, your lolas, lolo who are dying disproportionately in terms of age groups. And so there could also be a gender problem, but not as much as pronounced here. No, as you can see, the difference may not be really that significant. There could be about cities. It could be about governance in these different cities. As I said, these are questions that we need to be addressing as social scientists, as community development workers, as economists. We need to look at what's so special about Navotas that they become number one, or maybe Cebu, San Juan, and so on, in terms of per million cases, population cases. We can look at Quezon City as well. The new infection rates. You just don't. Yeah, okay. There's a title on top. Manila, you have a surge there as well. So this could be, there could be patterns there, and so the idea that we should have a data sharing framework. I've been in in and out doing some e-health work, and this has been a problem for decades already. I find it funny that DOH, for instance, was still having problems distinguishing De La Cruz that is joint versus De La Cruz that is set apart, and so that is bungling their information system. So this was a problem all the way back to the 1970s, but you'll be amazed how tenacious the digital problem is. So if you've got data sharing framework there, the privacy framework, please share with us, because we'll see how it can really be adapted, because that is at the kernel of the problem when we try to understand, to have a precise definition of the problems in Quezon City, Manila, or Navotas, or elsewhere. So you can also look at micro and more sociological, organizational pains. This is something that the Americans are concerned about. We're not necessarily seeing this pattern in the Philippines, but there's a divorce is not yet in effect in the Philippines, but it will be interesting to see how many divorces we'll have in light of COVID. No? And then we'll see how much of this divorce is driving poverty, at least in the Western country, it's US anyway. It's a significant driver of poverty. We now look at income and social safety net. This is a liberal framework that we're supposed to be maximizing the lot of the minimally advantaged. At least that's what we consider as an advocacy for what we do in the social and college. No? So we're looking at income, wage, a social safety net, as something sustainable, not just a buloy. So I'm interested to see data on SAP 7.3, and if this is something that can be reframed in a more long-term manner, sustainable manner. But as an added dimension, maybe in the discussion, we see income not just about money. And we have some work from our psychology department, social psychologist, Dr. Lina Lee Sisip, and recently Ton Clemente, looking at wages as a good starting point to improve the quality of life, the well-being. So we have developed a framework, for instance, of what might count as magandang buhay, because while we are talking about COVID as a challenge in survival, we hope to see past survival and really about thriving, about flourishing as human lives as Filipinos. And so I will not be discussing this. I won't have, I cannot do justice to the work of my colleagues. This has been a data-driven kind of formulation. So I leave this to you. But the idea is that there is more to income than just money. So if you look at fairness as a metric in the pursuit of social action, for instance, of interventions, whether central bank or other parts of government, we're looking at impact on well-being and resilience. How much of the wage or income would really be a predictor of resilience? The empirics has yet to follow to really be seen concretely, at least in local studies. It is something that may determine your capability, your capacity to respond to shocks, to crisis, because whether it's COVID or a storm or some other typhoons or some other mass crisis, possibly the big one, earthquake for Metro Manila, you will see income as a predictor. Income, not just money, but income as a total package. So we're looking at microfinancing solutions, for instance, that isn't just about survival, but about, as I said, capacity to flourish. So this has been articulated elsewhere. Some people, some colleagues would say this is so first world, so Scandinavian, but I think it doesn't have to be exclusively first world. So when we speak of microfinancing solution, it isn't just about loans, but really something that is really in support of universal basic income. So if you're looking at credit systems, it need not be about some dole out, but it could be something that is convertible to food. We see that maybe we can do something about the pagpag market, credits for water, electricity, and so digital payments would have to be integrated into these systems. And this is something that would require really some serious look at our data sharing practices. No? It will be about fair contributions. Many of our people of the poor have volunteered to do sanitation. Maybe they can also be tapped to look at recycling programs. We have so much plastic in the country. We have a problem of recycling, and then for many other countries in the world. But more specifically, we're looking at a model where collection of plastic can be monetized or can be factored into this credit system. So people are moving to Lazada, to Shopee, to online shopping. But if you haven't noticed, it just produced tremendous amount of plastic. So much deliveries involved over packaging with just too much plastic there. Could be other contributions to wildlife conservation, volunteer work, and all these can be factored as part of a credit system. So there are related challenges to these solutions. One solution would present attendant problems or challenges. The digital ID system is not yet in place and might be coming in rather too little too late. I understand that this is being pursued. An authentication problem related to that, of course. Fund transfer, you said that PS mentioned about SAP as new digital accounts. Are they related to the banking system? I saw your report. Majority of Filipinos remain unbanked. So we'll see some news maybe from you guys how this is going to be carried out in a massive scale, no, and not just some pilots. No, I'm of the thought, from the late Dornila that while it's fine and dandy to be doing all these disparate pilot studies, but unless you really have to scale this and scale it quickly and make big mistakes, real mistakes, it's not going to create any dent in the problems we're going to solve. So the microfinancing could also be tied to access to information. While you allow people to have some access to cash, to some capital, or probably supporting some kind of universal income in in exchange for their volunteer work, among others. So unless you couple that with access to knowledge, no? So there is a problem again of last mile connectivity, and there are some technical solutions there. For instance, we can apportion certain part of the credit, for instance, for access to certain knowledge sites. For instance, the telcos can well be made to do this as some kind of an X deal with government. All they have to do is really tweak the SSIDs in their Wi-Fi's. We have Wi-Fi's already all over run by telcos. And so it doesn't have to be exclusive, because the idea of some people is that you should have a government platform that may take time. No? So the last mile problem has to be solved fast. The other aspect has to do with the 4Ps. You already have a platform. There are many challenges with 4Ps, but it can be a starting point for more interventions. There are certain outcomes that are being addressed by 4Ps, but access to information is not one of these metrics being addressed. The data could be cleaned well. There are many more. There are 4Ps beneficiaries who are no longer qualified actually, but they continue to receive money. 4Ps has been the program has been there's a significant challenge there for people loaning their credit card and their bank accounts, and having debts way ahead of the actual release of money. So this area, but then the idea is that it has to be expanded and transformed as a platform. I'm looking at SAP now, thanks to Pia's information, or the information from Pia, but we'll see how this can really be transformed. Unless we put this in a form that many more people, maybe academic researchers, can analyze and can access in a meaningful way the solutions from central bank and from other civil society actors would remain siloed. No, it has to be some kind of a crowdsourcing that would enable us to look at these data sets more closely. So as I said, universal basic income is a good starting point for these things. So to end my presentation, I will just introduce this innovation curve or arc, whatever that is, what I should look to you. So when you do social innovation, you look at the level of satisfaction, and the idea, of course, is when you innovate, it's supposed to meet certain needs, social needs, whether it's going to be a product, a process, model, design. You want to tweak the market, but then it has to reach a certain level of efficiency for you to be able to capture the value of that. There has to be some inflection point. This is just from the point of view of the slide. It's so much messier out there. But then unless you see social participation and people being capacitated. And the last aspect I'm going to introduce is really the trust infrastructure that we're developing conceptually and more also support of empirics. And if you look at the literature in this, for instance, the work of Honora O'Neill in the UK, she would love to pit this against the so-called transparency kulto ng transparency. And we see government agencies putting all these transparency seals, but it doesn't have a dent on the level of trust of people in government and in other institutions. People continue to doubt what we really can do. Of course, this is not to say that it's entirely government's fault, but people do not become less mistrustful of institutions just because there is more information to be released. Okay, I'm not saying that that transparency is bad, but it has to be coupled with a kind of trust infrastructure that people are willing to really invest in emotionally to be able to really put in their share in transformation of or the solution of problems. So this is it for me. We are from the Social Innovations Lab. We're only building, but we hope to be able to contribute in our own little ways to address serious problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor C. I've learned a lot from that. It really made us see the whole wine or the wide range of perspectives that we have to consider for social innovations and financial inclusion. So we would like to hear now from Mr. Maynard Mojica to discuss the current status and challenges of financial inclusion.
So good afternoon again, everyone. So my role for today is to answer two questions. First is to answer what's the current status of financial inclusion in the Philippines, and second one is to answer what are the challenges in pursuing financial inclusion in our country. So hopefully this will provide context and more background as we discuss the proposed financial inclusion lab. So first, let's have a common understanding of financial inclusion. So what do we mean when we talk about financial inclusion? Actually, there's no standard definition. It varies depending on country realities. But in our country, this is how we define it in our national strategy: effective access to a wide range of financial products and services by all. Simply put, financial inclusion means promoting universal access to financial services in the same way that we are promoting universal healthcare or access to education. So we believe that access to finance is equally important because all of us have financial needs. So for example, we need to save money for the future or for emergencies. We borrow as we go through life stages. We need risk protection through insurance. We accumulate assets through investment. We have daily payments and remittance transactions. But for most of us, we are addressing these financial needs through informal sources, like for example, saving under the mattress or borrowing from 5, 6 lenders. So in the idea behind financial inclusion is that we should be able to access formal financial services that are suited to our needs and requirements. And while there are many financial products and services, our basic outcome indicator for financial inclusion is ownership of an account. So this is not just about bank account, but it can also be an account in non-banks like microfinance institutions and cooperatives, as well as electronic money wallets, so like GCash, PayMaya, GrabPay, to name a few. And this account can be used not just to save money, but to receive salary, benefits, to send and receive remittance, and make day-to-day payment transactions. So from a measurement perspective, we measure financial inclusion from these four lenses: access, usage, quality, and welfare. So when you say access, it's about the availability of the financial service providers, the touch points. Usage is about the uptake of financial products and services. So the regularity, the frequency, and the patterns of use. Quality dimension is about consumer experience. So it can relate to affordability, transparency in prices, the treatment of the bank personnel, whether you have choices in products, convenience, complaints, and level of satisfaction. And the most difficult one to measure is the welfare dimension, which is about the impact of access to finance to your life, especially to your financial well-being. So we are guided by the following principles in promoting financial inclusion. First is that the low income and the unbanked can be sustainably served by the private sector. And the role of the policymakers and regulator is to provide an enabling regulatory environment. So admittedly, most financial institutions will perceive the poor as high risk, high cost segment. And with our experience in microfinance, we have proven that the poor can actually pay their loan, they can even save, and they need a wide range of financial services. And they can be served sustainably by the private sector as long as we have the right financial products for them that are suited to their capacities and requirements. And aside from policies, BSP has been pushing for infrastructure that are needed to mitigate the risks. So for example, to address information asymmetry, we have been promoting for effective credit information system. For agriculture and micro, small, and medium enterprises, we have been pushing for effective guarantee system, crop insurance system, movable collateral registry. Of course, the national ID is another critical infrastructure, as well as digital infrastructure if we are to push for digital financial services. Second is that digital technology is a key enabler of financial inclusion. So there are many challenges in financial inclusion that cannot be addressed by traditional finance. So our country, we have more than 7,600 islands, and it's not feasible to set up a bank in each island. So technology provides unprecedented opportunities to reach the last mile. So with the developments such as electronic money, mobile banking, there's no need to go to the physical bank if we can transact using our mobile phones. Third is that financial inclusion cannot be driven by the regulator or any one institution alone. So as MD Pia mentioned, we have the national strategy, which means that financial inclusion is not a sole responsibility of the central bank. It's a whole of government, a whole of nation undertaking. So with the Financial Inclusion Steering Committee under the NSFI, we have 19 government agencies there. And the private sector has also launched several programs in support of the national strategy. And finally, we believe that financial inclusion can complement and reinforce other policy objectives such as financial stability, financial integrity, and consumer protection. So we call it the ISIP approach: I for inclusion, S for stability, I for integrity, and P for protection. So basically, it means that as we promote financial inclusion, we should also balance it with other policy objectives. So for example, if we want to extend credit, we have to ensure that that expansion of credit would not result in financial instability. So it's a balancing between inclusion and financial stability. If we want more people to be included into the system, we need to ensure that no dirty money will enter the system. So it's a balancing between inclusion and anti-money laundering, which is financial integrity. And if you want to include more people, we have to ensure that once they are included, they will be informed and protected so that they will not be vulnerable to scams and frauds. So that's a balancing between inclusion and protection. So we believe that these policy objectives are mutually exclusive and they can be complementary to each other. So I will now answer the first question, which is what is the status of financial inclusion? So I will answer this in terms of access, usage, and quality. So in terms of access, actually, we have plenty of financial service access points. So if you look at banks alone, counting head offices and branches, we have more than 12,800 banks. We have 21,000 plus ATMs. But are they distributed well across the Philippines? Well, we all know that the answer is no, because they are concentrated in NCR in urbanized areas. And based on our latest tally, 510 LGUs, so LGUs here refer to municipalities and cities, 510 LGUs are still unbanked. That's 31% of the total number of LGUs. And some regions are disproportionately unbanked. This include, for example, the Bangsamoro region, where we have 92% of LGUs there are unbanked, as well as Cordillera and Eastern Visayas, where 56% of LGUs are unbanked. The good news is that for those areas without banks, they have access to non-bank financial service providers, including pawn shops, money service businesses, so these are the remittance agents, credit cooperatives, and microfinance institutions. And that 31% unbanked would be significantly reduced to 5% unserved, meaning only 5% of the LGUs do not have any financial service access point at all. And based on our survey, pawn shops and bayad centers are perceived to be the most accessible access points. And these are also the access points where people conduct regular financial transactions. Let's now go to usage in terms of account ownership. So MDP already mentioned earlier that we have significant gains in terms of account ownership. So this has increased from 23% in 2017 to 29% in 2019. And if you look at the different types of account, you will see here that there's only modest improvement in bank account ownership from 11.5 to 12.2%. And then the account in microfinance institution is at par with banks at 12%, and it increased by 4 percentage points from 2017. The most remarkable growth really is on e-money accounts. And we say that this is remarkable because this means that even before the pandemic, we are already seeing an indication of shift towards digital because e-money accounts are inherently designed for digital payments. And you will also note that among account holders, there's increased usage of account for payment transactions. So from just 18% in 2017, in 2019, 39% of account holders are using their account for daily payment transactions. In terms of demographic segments, we're also happy to see that the highest growth was seen in the lowest social economic class, which is Class E, which grew by 13 percentage points. And then we also observed that the income gap narrowed. So in 2017, the Class ABC is 4 times more likely to have an account than Class E. But in 2019, Class ABC is just twice as likely to have an account than Class E. We also noticed that the gender gap has narrowed. So the Philippines is unique in the sense that we have a reverse gender gap favoring women, because in other countries, women are disproportionately disadvantaged in terms of financial inclusion. But in our case, the financial inclusion gap is favoring women, although the gap is also narrowing as we see faster growth among males. In terms of the urban-rural difference, it's also interesting to note that account ownership is slightly higher in rural areas, 30% rural, 27% in urban areas, which is driven by the presence of microfinance institutions in far-flung areas. In terms of uptake of other financial services, we have seen an increase in the number of Filipino adults with outstanding loans. So it increased from 22% to 33%. But most of these loans are actually informal, as I mentioned earlier. So 44% of outstanding of borrowers with outstanding loans they obtain their loan from family and friends, followed by informal lenders. But for formal sources, the top choice really are microfinance NGOs, followed by government entities. And you will see at the bottom that other formal entities like banks and co-ops are not, the top choices for borrowing. In terms of insurance, we've also seen 5 percentage point increase to 23% in 2019, and most of these are life insurance, microinsurance, and health insurance. For investment, there's a modest increase of 2 percentage points, but most of these investments actually are the contributions to SSS, Pag-ibig, and GSIS, and only 3% of those with investments invest in managed investment schemes like UITFs and mutual funds, and only 2% in time deposit. Now, let's talk about quality. So these are just some of the quality indicators that we were able to capture in our survey. In terms of ease of application for loan, many Filipino adults perceive that it's really difficult to borrow from formal financial institution, and it's almost half of adults think so. And the main reason for the difficulty is because of the lack of documentary requirements. They don't have the collateral, they don't have the ID, and they believe that their level of salary is not acceptable compared to the loan amount. In terms of assessment of fees, surprisingly, more than half of the adults believe are assess that the fees in financial institutions are actually cheaper than what they personally assess, although you will see a fifth of them assessing that it's too expensive or somewhat expensive. It's also common for some financial consumers to experience issues as they transact with financial access points, and 37% of those who perform transactions with financial service providers encountered issues. So what are the most common issues? These include long lines, long service time, personal information was shared to others, system under maintenance, receiving or sending of money is delayed, mistreated by staff, and was asked to go back and forth to finish transactions. So those are some of the consumer issues that encountered by the respondents of the survey. Now, this slide presents the results on digital finance, which is a new module of the 2019 survey. We asked whether the respondents have a mobile phone and access to internet, and whether they use those platforms to perform financial transactions. So 69% of adults have mobile phones, and 75% of mobile phone owners actually are smartphone users, but only 12% of those with mobile phones are using their mobile phones for financial transactions. So in terms of internet, more than half have access to the internet, but only 9% of internet users are using the internet for financial transactions. Now, what are the challenges? So basically, these reasons for exclusion are based on our question on what are the reasons why people don't have an account. And the main reason, we have been running these surveys for 3 rounds since 2015, and the number one reason is always the lack of enough money. Although the share of the unbanked who cited this reason has already declined from 60% in 2017 to 45% in 2019. Lack of need is another major reason because people do not see the value of owning an account. For most people, an account is just a privilege for those who have excess money to save. What people need to realize is that an account can be used for day-to-day financial transactions. For example, in our survey, we also found out that 9 in 10 adults have payment transactions. Almost all of us have payment transactions because we make bills payment, we pay for our goods and services, and 37% send money, 48% receive money. But most of these remittance transactions are through over-the-counter transactions at pawn shops and money service businesses. So that's an opportunity to convert those payments and remittances into account-based fund transfers. Lack of ID is another major reason. So prior to the passage of PhilSys, BSP has already liberalized the documentary requirements. For example, barangay clearance and certificate of good moral character should suffice for proof of identity. Hopefully, with the PhilSys, this will no longer be a significant issue. So other factors pertain to knowledge, awareness, trust, as well as distance. So what are the current solutions to address these barriers to financial inclusion? So if the problem is not having enough money or having an account is perceived to be expensive, the BSP has already issued a framework for basic deposit account. So this is a simplified deposit account wherein you can open with less than 100 pesos, no maintaining balance, no dormancy charges, simplified opening requirements to address this gap. And of course, another option to BDA are e-money accounts or e-money wallets. If the issue is no documentary requirements, so again, we have the PhilSys. This is under PSA, but the BSP is a very active member of the PhilSys Policy and Coordination Council, and we actually chair the technical working group on use cases wherein financial inclusion is a priority use case of PhilSys. Another reason which is not needed, we've been pushing for compelling use cases of transaction accounts. So for people to realize the value of an account, they should see the use. So that's why we've been partnering with the SWD for the use of account for the disbursement of 4-piece benefits as well as SAP2. Then we have partnership with DOLE for the use of accounts for wage payments. Very recently, DOLE has issued a labor advisory on the use of accounts for wage payments and also the digitalization of payments in the transportation sector. And we also been pushed, we have the national retail system, InstaPay and PesoNet, so that you can transfer from one account to other accounts, even if you do not belong to the same bank or to the same e-money provider. When it comes to issues on awareness, knowledge, trust, of course, financial education and consumer protection is part of BSP's financial inclusion agenda. Actually, our unit, the Center for Learning and Inclusion Advocacy, looks at this trio: inclusion, education, and consumer protection. And during the pandemic, we have been rolling out our digital literacy campaign on how to use digital channels safely as more people use online banking transactions during the pandemic. We have a chatbot called the BSP Online Buddy, or Bob, so that the public can lodge their complaints automatically or virtually to our chatbot. And we have been pushing for the Financial Consumer Protection Act to strengthen the role of regulators in consumer protection. And if the issue is distance, of course, considering that we're an island, there's still many areas in the Philippines with no bank. So we have cash agents, e-money agents. So these are the retail outlets where people can do cash in, cash out, and perform other financial transactions. So the likes of sari-sari stores, pharmacies, or drugstores, and even pawn shops that are offering financial services on behalf of the bank or the e-money issuer. So this is my last slide, and actually it's the same with my previous slide. It's just that in this slide, the initiatives that we have so far launched are arranged in a strategic framework to show how the policies and initiatives are connected to each other and how we plan to achieve our target of 70% inclusion by 2023. So the 3 pillars of our inclusive digital finance agenda are democratize access to an account through BDA and e-money, expansive network of low-cost touchpoints through cash and e-money agents, and efficient retail payment system through the national retail payment system. So the idea here is you should be able to easily open an account, and you can transact with that account using touch points that are accessible. And you don't need to maintain several accounts just to facilitate payments and remittances, because there is the NRPS that enables interoperable fund transfer. So you only need one account, and you can use that account to send and receive funds from others. So underpinning the three pillars are what we call the enablers. Of course, these are the compelling use cases, infrastructure, and digital literacy, financial education, and consumer protection. So aside from these measures that we have put in place, we are confident that we will, as MD Pia mentioned, we are confident that we will be able to achieve our 70% target by 2023, because the pandemic has provided significant momentum towards digital finance. But we also need to ensure that we will address the digital divide in terms of digital literacy and digital connectivity. Actually, in the last meeting of the Financial Inclusion Steering Committee under the NSFI, ICT policy reforms were the focus of the discussions, because we really need to address the internet connectivity issues if we are to push for greater adoption of digital financial services. So this is the strategic framework, but some of these policies and initiatives are relatively recent, so we are yet to see the impact of these policies and initiatives. And as Ms. Pia mentioned, we can also look at second order issues or next order agenda, which we can explore in the proposed Financial Inclusion Lab. So if you want to see more results from our survey, it is posted in the BSP website, and you can also email us in case you want a copy of the questionnaire and raw data. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Maynard, for that. And it's very interesting to learn about the findings that you presented on digital finance. So now we would like to hear from Dr. Elmer Soriano to talk about the Financial Inclusion Lab. I can share my screen.
Okay, thanks.
There.
No. I modified it, so I'll just share my screen.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
All right.
So why are we here? Now, why did we bring together academics and the Bangko Sentral and the incubators? First, who are we and why are we doing this? We're the Civic Asian Development Academy, and we work at the intersection of leadership, innovation, and impact. So to us, we teach leadership. We work with governors, mayors, on governance innovations, but we also want our teaching and coaching to be measurable in terms of development impact. And one way we do that is by engaging universities and helping them set up labs or activating labs in partnership with them. So what are social labs? Parang sanay naman tayo, may chemistry lab and physics lab, but what are social labs? One, they are multi-sectoral collaborative communities. So they bring together practitioners, gaya nito sa meeting na to. We have bankers, academics, economics, engineering, psychology, physics, ganyan, because the problems are complex and we need multiple perspectives. Second, they are experimental. We have to try, this COVID forces us to do a series of experiments. So trying to figure out MECQ, ECQ, ganyan. So, and in financial inclusion, we are expecting second order and third order problems. And we need to experiment our way forward. And the lab provides a platform for that. Third, they are systemic. The ideas are meant to be plugged into the broader ecosystem, recognizing that the solutions will not work as standalone technologies. And we have some prior experience with this. We had the opportunity to work with 11 universities with DSWD. We designed the curriculum. We taught 11 universities, including Ateneo de Naga, Silliman, Ateneo de Zamboanga, 11 of them, and they in turn trained 1,000 social workers in 1,000 municipalities. No? And yung training nila, may practicum. So they had to engage the mayors in real governance innovation conversations. And when we did that, sabi namin uh, part of the evidence that you're doing your homework is you have to have a selfie with the mayor. That's evidence that you had indeed engaged the mayor and you were trying to work on something at the local level. And we did this across 11 universities. And we thought that it was a very, to my mind, a very high leverage activity to be working with universities, especially with complex problems. No? This is what we were thinking prior to COVID. No? BARM is, has a large of unbanked population, and they're also going through this transition from the MILF to Parliament. So we thought, what if we did multi-site research with multiple universities along the financial inclusion problem set? Okay, that way bibilis yung learning natin, no? And actually with COVID we're seeing an unprecedented collaboration among scientists, no? Mostly in the epidemiology, in the health sciences, but there's no reason why we cannot synergize with each other in terms of R&D for financial inclusion. So we had planned to bring in somebody who was a new adopter of fintech during the ECQ. I in fact recorded an interview this morning. I interviewed a contact sa Payatas, but the interview was too long, and so instead I was planning to play it during this meeting, but we're running out of time. So I'll just summarize his case. No, I interviewed. His name is Kevin. That's not his real name. He's 18 years old. A 2-year-old kid. He lives with his wife and at his mother's place in Payatas, and he got his GCash account 2 Fridays ago, and then he received 8,000 pesos. Now he was lucky because his name was already on the list of the barangay, so wala siya masyadong problema sa identification and all that because he's been a long-term resident there, but he had shared that yung mga nangungupahan na kapitbahay nila na wala pa sa listahan ng barangay, they had a really difficult time proving that they were from there. Many of them were not able to get their ayuda because they were basically unknown to the barangay because they were just renting. No? When he got his 8,000 pesos, he, instead of buying food, like actually nahiya sila na ang ginamit niya, pinangpaayos niya ng kwarto nila in his mother's place because they're squeezing in his mother's place sa Payatas. Pinangpaayos niya. Tapos nahiya sila because alam niya na at least in the news, the poor households are expected to be buying food. Pero sabi nila, every week naman merong nagdadala ng bigas sa simbahan. So they get, on top of this ayuda, they get food rations from all sorts of donors. So they instead, sabi nila, bihira naman kami makakuha ng 8,000 pesos in a lump sum. So pinangpaayos na lang nila ng kwarto nila. They made a little loft para may extra floor space, square footage inside their place. No? So that's how he did it. Tapos in terms of encashing the 8,000 that went to his GCash account, nabalitaan lang na sobrang haba ng pila sa pawn shop. So instead, he had transferred it to the friend of his mother who had a BDO account. So GCash to BDO. Tapos kinuha niya na lang cash from that friend of his mother who was a neighbor. Instead of so parang meron ng mini informal tellers who help people bypass the long lines in the pawn shop. Tapos sabi na actually mas mura kasi sa pawn shop 180 pesos yung service fee, pero kung bank to bank daw it's much lower, and he was charged 100 pesos na lang kaltas, no? So may transaction fee rin doon sa informal but it was much lower and much more efficient for him. Yun, no? So ano yung nakita na, why are we convening a meeting between academics and the Bangko Sentral and the incubators. No? What might be in this for you? We thought that one, if we got our students and faculty to focus on the complex problems uh, triggered by this pandemic recession, then that would be a good use of brain power. No? Naghanap rin naman ng problem set yung mga estudyante, then why not work on the problem set on financial inclusion? Of course, that's among the many other problem sets triggered by COVID. No? Second, for the incubators, the Financial Inclusion Lab can help develop differentiated track for idea incubation. No? And then third, we will, through the Financial Inclusion Lab, we will help faculty and students go on a deep dive quickly, no? Because it's a complex space, multidimensional. It's not your regular discipline that you teach within the College of Engineering or College of Economics. So the Financial Inclusion Lab will accelerate the deep dive into this problem space. And then fourth, there's an opportunity to bring the diverse disciplines and connect possibly through the incubators in the universities, no? Because we want this to be more than just a description of the problem. We're hoping that we actually get to incubate new technologies and startups to complement whatever's already out there. Now, maybe we can incubate technologies that become extensions of the technology of GCash or Palawan Pera Padala. No? Para mabilis yung upgrade, conversion of the technology from the university to commercial release. And then number 5, we know that the faculty, there are term papers and student projects, and of course you're adjusting to this online learning thing. No? But there's still a lot of value, and now is a good time to teach students to use their tools to bear upon the complex problems that we're facing right now. And then we see that, this is the finance industry, and we are hoping, we're crossing our fingers that bankers and other financial institutions will begin to see the university as partners in accelerating innovation. Okay, so this is how we see it, no? The Financial Inclusion Lab will be operating at the intersection of the university, the classroom work, and then the financial institutions. No? And then there will also be they will also be engaged in conversations with the community so that they will be able to bring together data points from the discipline, from the practice, and from the community, and that we feel that that could also be a compelling learning methodology. Okay, so ano yung pwedeng configuration? What are the scenarios for university participation in the Financial Inclusion Lab? One, we imagine that pwedeng may practitioner fellows. No? So these could be bankers who will visit the College of Engineering or College of Economics and talk at courses so that the students will become more grounded in the practice of the industry. We can have teaching fellows, faculty or interested in extending their teaching to this problem set, whether it's engineering or social work or economics or IT. And then research fellows, graduate students or undergraduate students who are looking for a thesis topic or a project to work on anyway that they need to execute in the first or second semester. We also see that, kunwari, pwedeng Quezon City, the Quezon City is also interested, also wants their population to become increasingly included financially. And they could also be part of this lab community. And then advisors, possibly from the incubators who have expertise in human-centered design, and then donors and venture capitalists. So for the next segment, we thought that maybe we can have a discussion of how we might, as we start the first semester, and we know that you're teaching diverse subjects this semester. How might the Financial Inclusion Lab collaborate with your colleges so that we can co-create solutions to the financial inclusion gaps. Yeah, so maybe that can be the next part of this conversation.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Elmer Soriano. So we have about 10 minutes to do that, and we would really like to hear from you. Your thoughts on how we can proceed. What would be the next steps for us from here? Would anyone like to bring up?
Yeah, Leah, if I may. Yeah, can you flash the slide again, Mr. Elmer, the last one, the next step slides, so that we can be guided. First of all, thank you for. Hold on, I'll turn off my video. It's riot here in the house with all the kids. Hold on. Sorry to manage. Anyway, yeah. So first of all, thank you for sharing with us that story on the GCash recipient of the social payments. That resonates and is actually very insightful for us, especially since we've been so closely coordinating with the DSWD this whole time now to see how that could be made possible, that they be paid into accounts. And so we really want to see how, how what's the benefit, or what happens now when it's received. As I mentioned to you, that's now what we want to look into more deeper in terms of seeing the behavior of these new account holders receiving a lump sum, if you will, in an account. So the insights there will be very valuable for us. So I think in terms of research, I mentioned, and I'll just speak in very broad terms, I mentioned that we really want to explore all opportunities that can help us expand our evidence base. And our limitations, although we have access to a lot of data, supply side data from reports of our supervised institutions. On the demand side, we're limited through our surveys. So the deeper behavioral understanding, which is a component that is sometimes the hardest to explain, we do not have the I would say the reach for that kind of research. And so this, I think, is something that will really benefit our work and understanding the challenges. So I think you gave what you shared, even in brief, is exactly where I think there could be a lot of value add. Second is Maynard mentioned. Of course, you'll see the theme, no, of digital and developing trust. Those are now priority areas that we want to make sure are present to move the financial inclusion agenda. And Maynard mentioned that we have Bob. So Bob is our chatbot, and it's an AI with NLP capabilities. We see this as such a big opportunity to be able to capture even more non-structured data. So usually, as I said, we get our data from the supervised institutions using formats that we've mandated. So this one is more free form, and therefore it gives us even more insight, and it's open through social media channels. So it's open on Facebook Messenger, SMS, web chat. So I think we expand the net in so far as who we are listening to through Bob. And we're working with the Innovations for Poverty Action on trying to see, what kind of data how we can look at this data for our consumer protection mandate. But I'm giving that example because as we move towards more digital and our capabilities to now access more free-form data, big data through social media tools, we will also need the capacity to understand and process those kinds of information. So again, that's an area also that if done in partnership or by the academe and innovators, then I think it will also very much enrich our process. Another area which we haven't discussed, and I think Professor Toby, this will resonate with you because when she first looked at our financial inclusion survey, um, I think the first thing, one of the things she mentioned is, you always say that financial inclusion is not the final objective. It's really for growth and broad-based growth. So there needs to be a very key, deliberate focus on MSMEs or sectors that are, that are employing and, source of employment. So agri and MSMEs are a priority. And I think a positive update there is that with the support of the Asian Development Bank, we might actually have our first MSME survey. Um, Director Joyce of Essentia is here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joyce, that this is moving along in terms of, I think the terms of reference for the survey firm is already out. So I think we'll be able to have this by next year. So this is something that will give a lot of insight and definitely a lot of research opportunities as well. Because if you are tracking the MSME sector, we always just hear the same things over and over again. How much percent in manufacturing, how much are here, they're in Calabarzon, they're ganito, they're employing this, their contribution to GDP, but no, not a lot of level of evidence that we want to be able to really craft policies and even for the private sector to find opportunities. So that's one that's forthcoming. That could be an area. And the other one is on the agriculture side. The BSP is working on an agri value chain financing pilot program where we're working with banks, again through the Asian Development Bank, to increase capacity in of the banks to actually know how to lend to agricultural value chains. There is I think that's rich for research. I mean, in many aspects, parang earlier about community development. I mean, there's many aspects that could be further explored there. May not only be financial inclusion related. That will be very useful to inform the whole look at the sector and also financing this sector. So maybe those are just some of my initial responses to these next steps, and by highlighting those particular areas.
Thank you. If I may ask, no, so we have faculty from economics, engineering, and College of Social Sciences. Parang, if given this problem set, how might we interface with academics? No? Should we go instructor by instructor, or is there something that we can take to the dean or department chair and sige, let's have a next meeting kay dean na tayo makipag-usap? I mean, how would we go about aligning your coursework for the first semester with this kind of problem set? Now, I know, of course, Ateneo also from that. How do we navigate through the research alignment conversations with your respective departments or colleges? Maybe Prof. Toby, because you're familiar and it's firsthand. Any thoughts?
Okay, let me. Well, I saw my colleague here, and I'm not sure if he's still here. See Renato Reside, who's in charge of financial econ, but he's really not financial econ per se. This is it's different. I think, to be honest with you, this next sem is really tough for academe, right? We're all trying to adjust to a new mode of remote learning, and we're really having a hard time. I'm speaking for myself. I don't know if my colleagues in UP feel the same way. But just so you know, every semester there is a cohort of undergraduate students who do a research paper, right? That's Econ 199. The issue, of course, is that it has to start and it has to be completed within that sem. And so typically they do things where the data is already available and you don't have to look for more data, or else it's just not feasible, right? So that's one. I mean, if there's data that needs to be, that, you know, people want further examination of, that's one thing, right? You can provide the data, and that is, you know, we just offer it to students who and in their 199, they formulate economic questions, and they use the data to answer those questions in empirical, you know, econometric, using econometrics and all that. So that's good. The second track is, of course, our, you know, graduate students. This is 299, or those who are doing a thesis. 299 should be, again, also finished in one semester, or at most 1 year. The thesis is a little more fluid. It's supposed to be finished within 1 year, but again, that's you may have greater engagement at that level, right, with grad students. You just have to catch them before they choose a topic. You know what I'm saying? Because once you have a topic, wala na yan. Parang it's very difficult to change track, right? But that's one. So but it would require really, honestly, it would require, I think, a little more prior thought in terms of what are the questions that need answering. You get it? And this is what, and I'll move on to that later, but that makes it so much easier, right? And then if that's the policy question, or the question of the, you know, yeah, the question that policymakers want answered, or other practitioners or banks want answered, then the task is to see if it can be answered using the data, and what methodology can be used for that, right? So, but the question is always the toughest thing, you know. And so if you want something collaborative, I would suggest that you have questions ready. You know what I mean? And so that helps, right? That's how I see it, you know, on the student side. With respect to faculty, that's, you know, there are faculty who may be interested in the topic itself. Well, you know, I'm listening now. I don't know who, mainly because I'm already kind of invested because, you know, I work with Pia and stuff. And so, you know, that's something that's more fluid, that will be more organic. I don't know if that answers your question. But can I just comment on, you know, on what Pia and Maynard reported and suggested, and just to say, you know, I think what's really important, I think, honestly, in terms of, is what Pia mentioned, you know, the need to articulate what she called second order issues, right? Because it's as she already said, it's not just getting the account, right? It's what the account can do to improve welfare. And that's where I think, you know, there's evidence globally on that. And actually, you know, for the low income, the evidence is, you know, an account really helps with managing cash flows, risk managing risk at a certain basic level, the evidence does not show that it lowers poverty, right? That's not apparent. But it doesn't mean, just because it doesn't lower poverty, it doesn't mean that it doesn't improve welfare, right? So let's separate the two, okay? And I think that's where it would be really good, and I agree with Pia, to really do, I don't know what you call it, qualitative. It doesn't have to be quantitative research, right? It can be a mix of qual and quant to really determine. The question that first came to my mind when I heard everything was, well, why did the 7 million, apart from wanting to get the ayuda? Actually, I'm not sure if which is the one that it was it 7 million, or even before the ayuda, there was a number that got accounts.
Ayuda, for the ayuda. They had no choice, actually.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the increase that you're showing also in the survey. Because my question is, well, even to the 7 million, okay, the question would be, is it just for ayuda, right? Or do they see, are they starting to use it for something else, diba? Then the question, then it's what Maynard posed. If there's actually nothing in their minds in terms of how to use it further than the ayuda, then that's where the work comes in, right? Why is that? What are the compelling use cases? And I would ask the practitioners in the room now, what is the compelling use case? I'm not sure we can answer it ourselves, right? I really don't. I mean, we can answer it theoretically. But we really have to think as to what is the compelling case to use it, and why using the formal system beats the informal system for those reasons, diba? So cash smoothing, managing risk, etc. Clearly, you have to overcome a hurdle before you're convinced that the formal system is the better route to go, right? And what is that? And I think that is a question we really have to explore somehow, and in more tangibly, so that you put purpose to this campaign, right? In terms of not just opening an account, but actually the satisfaction of seeing people use the account in ways that make their life better. Yeah. I think the development in terms of the MSMEs is really, really, I'm very happy with that. And just to make it more precise, right? What we observe, the reason why we say that financial inclusion should really start thinking about its role with small and medium enterprises. If we want financial inclusion to be an instrument for transformation, right? Is that distinction between micro and small. Apparently, there's really a big leap between micro and small. You have subsistence entrepreneurs and transformational entrepreneurs. And that's the big difference between poverty impacts and employment impacts versus, individual welfare and smoothing and all that, right? So, if Elmer, if you're, I know I'm not addressing your issue about how to engage the academe, but it's more, if you're going to start thinking about topics, this is where I think, I think that's the first step, quite frankly, before you sell the program. Not that the academe will not have their own topics, but it really helps when you're presented with things that there's something already there, right? And that you can just further refine. So I think there's really a lot of things one can chew on in this, and they're quite basic. They're quite basic. Thanks.
I have a quick question for you, Prof. Toby. So
BSP.
Okay, Toby. So BSP came up with a survey, and it has its own questions from a regulator's perspective, I imagine. No? But what is the unit of analysis that makes sense for your students? No? What kind of questions, or how should the questions be framed so that it is the kind of questions that that students can recognize and yes, okay, I'll work on that. No? Because seemingly the survey results of BSP are not, di pa yun yung question frame work. I don't know.
No, actually the BSP questionnaire has, provides a really good first step. I haven't seen the most recent incarnation. They changed it for the second round and third round. You can't really capture everything in one survey. What it poses, what it suggests is that there's, and I've told this to Pia, there's room for smaller surveys, deeper dives. It doesn't have to be national. I think we talked about it could be, within municipality or province where you really want to ask the follow-up questions, right? What do you mean by you have no money? Diba? These things, the instrument of BSP, it would be too unwieldy if you try to do it there, but you can do it at a smaller scale and mix quantitative and qualitative methods to really ask what people mean when they say they do not have money to save, right? Because it's not, there's an inconsistency there, diba? I can't articulate it, but I know there is. So it would be at the level of the individual. Most definitely, that's the ideal. Typically, it's at the level of the household, but the BSP instrument is individual. Yeah, they don't represent a house. Yeah, you don't represent a household. It's not like the.
Yes, it's individual.
Yeah, it's individual. So it's fine in that sense, no. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There are, just to say, there are other data sets in BSP, Pia, the consumer
finance survey. Yeah, that's household.
Yes.
So,
and how that can, how you can, how can
tie
those
that together. Yes.
Yeah, we haven't figured that out.
Yeah, but in the recent runs, we've tried our best. Duplications or alignment are addressed or alignments are done. So baka it will be easier to tie together.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe in the next one. But Elmer, there's, quant-qual, I believe in FGDs. I really do. Done properly, rigorously. That sort of data is valid, So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So why don't we walk across the street to Ateneo, our participants from Ateneo, and then pose the same question: how might we tap or align with the brain power of Ateneo so that we can engage them to work on this problem set or problem space?
Elmer, if I may answer. I'm thinking, medyo similar sa sinabi ni Prof. Toby, that maybe there's a need to first parang sort of curate the problem set. Maybe we'll have to, kasi parang nangyari ngayon, parang sobrang daming problems. It might be overwhelming if we try to tackle all. Maybe we can focus on a few muna, tapos we pilot an activity. Siguro just to give a concrete example, Pia did mention a while ago that they have possible data available from the Bob chatbot. So with that, for example, we can talk with our social computing laboratory and see what can we do with this chatbot. Tapos actually, it will also require maybe discussing with the BSP and finding out ano ba yung parang mga main pain points, or at least some of the issues that you think that the chatbot can address. They did mention a while ago that maybe it can address partly the consumer protection, I think, if I understood correctly. Tapos maybe we can talk with the researchers from the Social Computing Lab at Ateneo and see what can be done. So pero ang general point ko, maybe one way to move forward is to understand some of the sort of some of the issues or concerns or even pain points of the BSP and try to curate it and maybe discuss the curated version with a potential researcher or group of researchers who might be able to come up with solutions. No? In terms of timing, tama si si Toby na swertihan kung ngayari wala pang topic yung mga estudyante. But generally, for graduate students, I think it's more flexible because some of the graduate students typically typically look for topics even in midway sa semester, no? Kasi talagang they look at the possible options. Sa undergraduate medyo tight kasi the deadlines are very tight. They have to start at certain time, they have to finish at a certain time. But for graduate students, it's a little bit more flexible. So maybe we can explore that mode, no? Anyway, unless baka Benji and Brian have also some ideas on how we can move forward.
I have a question for Pia.
Yes.
Pia, when you say this 7.2 million SAP accounts, when you say this is digital, are the users able to manage this directly or at least update the profiles?
Yeah, they're digital because they're full they're what we call transaction accounts. So they're InstaPay ready, PesoNet ready, sending and receiving functionality. So parang the usual functionalities of all accounts. And once that's there, yes, they can do now whatever they want with that account. Ang problem lang is that most of these accounts are designed for those with mobile. So some adjustments needed to be made because it turned out, even if we say nga, a lot of us already have phones, 75%, I think what Maynard showed, a lot of the beneficiaries wala pa. So ang binigay sa kanila parang yung access, parang kumbaga account number. And they're going to have to do the cash in, cash out through the agents. But in every shape or form, it's an account, a full transaction account.
That they can directly manage the owners. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Oo. This is parang different from yung what you mentioned, Mr. Peter, na 4-piece na cash cards. Na binigay dati ng Land Bank, na binibigay ng Land Bank. It's not full, parang hindi siya full feature. Actually, what you can do lang there is that pwede mo lang i-withdraw. And the only entity that can load it is DSWD through Land Bank. So now, with the new 4-piece law, these cash cards are mandated to be transformed into transaction accounts. So I think ang target nila is by this year, magiging transaction accounts na. So aside from the 7 million, we have the 4-piece, which are about 4.4 million na magiging full accounts. So also knowing the benefits of accounts, what it's for, beyond the ayudas, as Prof. Toby mentioned, are all being addressed naman. There are many initiatives that they're trying to address on this.
Sige, before we wrap up, maybe we can ask...
Mr. Elmer, sorry if I may, and I think si Maynard naman asked permission, but we invited IPA and they're here, no?
Yes, in fact, that was what I was about to say. We would like to ask for Ms. Nasreen
okay, because I don't
Innovations
know.
for Poverty Action.
Yes, because we had just had a meeting this morning about our ongoing work, and IPA is known for their RCTs, and I don't know lang their interaction with the academe. So
maybe she can share her thoughts.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for inviting us. We're happy to be joining this meeting as well. And as discussed with the rest of the financial inclusion team and with Pia this morning, we are quite open to sharing evidence on what works in financial inclusion. So we've done a couple of RCTs on financial inclusion, both in the Philippines and in other contexts. And part of the work that we do is not just generating evidence, but also making sure that we're able to share this across a broad range of sectors. People who are interested in the evidence as well as stakeholders. Another stream of work that we do is what we call our Right Fit Evidence Unit, which includes our M&E unit as well as our embedded labs unit. So we work with different governments around the world to create labs which are embedded in the agencies themselves to think through some of the programs that they're working on and policies that they're implementing on, and how to tweak those policies and programs so that they can actually achieve the outcomes that they're aiming for. And part of the rigorous methodology that we use is, we have nimble RCTs for these labs, but we also use admin data. So, we have multiple types of methods that we use in this space. And one of the things as well that I mentioned to Pia earlier on is that we're happy to share the work that we do as well on research. So we have a unit at IPA called Research Methods Unit, which is a unit that does experiments on our research methods as well. And so, for example, in the Philippines, we're running a national panel survey under an initiative which we call Recover Survey. And this is really trying to understand the different government programs being implemented under the COVID crisis, and what is the response, and looking at how households are faring right now. And so within these kinds of experiments and surveys that we do, we also embed experiments on research, and we hold webinars as well to share the lessons that we've learned in terms of research methods, some of the best practices that we've seen in different contexts. And we actually have a lot of people asking us, both from non-government and government agencies, asking us whether we can share results in these experiments, especially now that when you're collecting data and doing research, you can't just send people to the field to run interviews, or for enumerators to knock on households. That's no longer possible at this time. And so we did collect some best practices and lessons there that we can definitely share. Looking at respondent fatigue, if you're doing phone surveys, comparing online surveys and phone surveys as well, thinking through how to run qualitative interviews efficiently when you're doing it on the phone instead, or through video conference instead of in-person FGDs. So that one we can also share. And I think that's something that we would definitely be happy as well to contribute to the Financial Inclusion Lab, in case you want to tap us as resource persons.
Great, thanks. Yes, well, speaking of nimble, maybe maybe one of the next steps, just because we're just about to start the first semester, and we do want to catch the attention of students looking for problems to work on this coming SEM. Maybe we can organize a series of brown bag sessions. So basically Zoom calls, maybe 60 or 90 minutes. We can go deep into these well-defined problem spaces, problem sets, so that one, we get to talk about it and bounce off ideas with each other. And then two, it becomes reference materials on YouTube for students who are looking for a problem to work on for the upcoming semester. But it also helps us advance the discourse on ano nga ba tong financial inclusion, and yes, will these 7 million new account owners derive optimal benefit from now being plugged into this formal platform that they already have in their pockets.
Right, yeah. Sounds great. Yeah, we'll be happy to be resource persons in these brown bags. And
okay, great.
Yeah, we'll definitely be willing to share the results. So aside from our team in the Philippines, we have a financial inclusion program team based in Washington, D.C. And as long as the time of this webinars are friendly to East Coast time, then I'm sure they'll be happy to be resource persons as well.
Okay. So that would have to be 8 p.m. Well, but
or
yeah.
8 a.m. Manila, 8:30 a.m. Manila, that's fine with them.
Right, that's it. Right. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll take you up on that offer. So any last few thoughts before we wrap up? Thank you very much for sticking with us and extending a bit of your time dito.
Mark, just quick lang, input
Sure,
siguro.
sure, Jack.
I was thinking also just now, maybe instead of doing research with the students, we can also organize some competition, mga hackathon ba? So that parang actually you just present the problems faced to the students, and usually it's a good way to tap the students, parang creative ideas and find out different solutions. Minsan sa nakagulat, hindi yan yung in-expect mong solution, and in fact it really works, no? But to do that, maybe there's some, you'll have to curate the actual problem sets, and you'll have to have some resources organizing some hackathon. Anyway, but that's some idea for to work with in the future.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, sure.
No, I was just gonna suggest, you should have you tried, to include FEU. FEU. The president is Mike Alba, who was also with UP before. But they may be interested in something like this because it's the if I'm not mistaken, their board, is very heavily involved in the banking sector at one point. So it's something that, and I know that they're trying to beef up their, policy work. So you may want to, reach out to them too.
Sure. We'd be happy to do that. Okay. Sige, so I'll just summarize things and then so that we can let you go on this Friday afternoon. Sasabak pa kayo sa traffic or you're already home. So anyway, so thank you very much. Now, this was the first formal forum that we had with Bangko Sentral, BSP. It took several months to get this to happen, no? And fortunately, we are just about to start the first semester, so baka maihabol pa natin yan, no? And we might be able to attract a first set of students and faculty to work on this problem space this semester, no? So we got an overview of the sector and the challenges and opportunities. Yes, there we anticipate second order and third order problems and gaps, no? But that means that we have to also create second order and third order solutions to these gaps. Otherwise, malulunod lang tayo sa wave after wave of problems caused by this pandemic and economic downturn. So we will be reaching out to you again. We would appreciate it if you would, Zoom lang naman, on Zoom, but we could co-host brown bag sessions with Ateneo and UP and specific departments, maybe the College of Engineering for one brown bag, and then we go tech-centric, and then maybe econ-centric and innovation-centric, so that we can explore the different themes in partnership with colleges or departments that already have the subject matter expertise, at least in that domain, that will allow us to derive more leverage from these brown bag sessions. Yeah. Pia, do you have any last words before
no
we close?
more. Well, actually, I saw a comment on the chat box about design thinking, and I was saying that actually we can even involve financial service providers who also want to ask research questions and to help them design better products and services. And the comment on the chat box just highlighted that for me. So, but no other comment. Just thank you, and yeah, we hope that this will be a start of a good and fruitful and productive undertaking and effort. We're happy to stay connected on this.
All right. So thank you very much, Ms. Pia, Professor Toby as well. Gave good insights. We're looking forward to the next step that we would do are the brown bag sessions. So looking forward to that, and we'll definitely connect with the other players that were suggested. So I think with that, we can close this session, and thank you very much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.